Hey guys, I got first place in my remote duels here, doing a video deck profile for Lord Trent, zombie deck profile, so let's get into it. First we're going to start off with our 2 copies of Solitaire. Basically your normal summon, one of your normal summons, your starter, gets you into level 4 lower tuner monster, zombie tuner monster, 0 defense. First we have our first tuner monster here, Unizombie, level 3 tuner. Foolish Burial from deck or hand. From hand it could be any card, monster, spell, trap, doesn't matter. Target a card on field, increase its level. Then we have our second normal, Gozuki. Similar to Unizombie, generally Foolish Burial on legs, 17, fairly nice beater. Secondary effect, you can banish 1 other zombie from grave, special 1 zombie from hand. It's good to get into extending plays when you need an extra body on board. And then we're going to get into our recursion, or one of the recursions rather, which is Mizuki. I play 3 copies, because why not? I'll try to capitalize on as much as possible. It can be bricky from time to time. Most people cut it down to 2, but I prefer 3. Target a card in grave, special summon it, but it has to be a zombie. Then we're getting into our second engine, which is Glow Up Bloom. If there's a zombie world on field, banish him from grave, special 1 level 5 or higher zombie monster from deck. Generally you go into cards like Jacobolin or Balderdrach. Level 1 tuner can be summoned out through Solitaire if you really have to, but generally you wouldn't do that. Our field spell spitter, which will be Necroworld Banshee. Either on field or in grave, banish her, activate zombie world straight from deck or hand while she's on field, and if you have zombie world, protects it from targeting and card destruction. Play a single copy of Jacobolin. I used to play that too for like a control variant, but I find it's better off at 1 because it fodders the graveyard for discarding and special summoning, and generally on field during your opponent's main phase, banish it, target a card in either player's graveyard, has to be zombie, obviously, zombie world would be face up. Special summon it, and when it leaves the field, banish it. Then our big beater for the Bloom engine, Doom King Balderdrach, 28 beater, has recursion from the graveyard during either player's standby phase, as long as there's a field spell face up. When you have zombie world face up, you can activate his effect in response to that zombie's effect to either negate the activation or banish a card from either field or grave. And we're going to get into the danger package now. 1 copy of Dangerous Tsuchinoko. Basically, reveal, if he's discarded, he specials himself from grave. All the dangers have the same recursive effect, which if they're special summoned through their own effect, they each draw a card. Jackalope is the special summoner of the engine. If he gets discarded, you would special summon something like either Tsuchinoko or any other danger from deck. Then we got Mothman for the 1-for-1 draw power, or discarding effect rather. So he gets discarded, activate, both your opponent and you would draw a card and discard 1. Then you have Danger Nessie, which is the rotor for the engine. She gets discarded, search for any of them, doesn't really matter. And we're going to get into, obviously most people would know Dark Magician and Red Eyes are for the Red Eyes Dragoon fusion play. So these are the 2 1-ups I play for Red Eyes Fusion and Verte Anaconda. The 1 copy of True King Lithosagem. I generally play him for Gozuki and Mizuki to pop, destroy, special him, rip my opponent's extra deck, but it's been a little on and off. I'm considering cutting him at this point, but it's my option to play him. The single copy of Buster Whelp, because Union Carrier with this card is obviously ignorant. Equip it and your opponent can't go into the extra deck. The single copy of Plague Spreader Zombie, because we play Needle Fiber, and he is a single recursion from the graveyard for extending plays. Then we're going to get into hand traps. 2 copies of Ash Blossom, because we don't like our opponent searching or specialing cards. The 2 copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, because we don't like invocation or opponents activating cards in grave that would special themselves or banish. Alright, so we're going to get into the spells. 3 copies of Zombie World, because why? It's the lifeblood of the deck. Obviously, it's a floodgate for those that need their archetype and helps facilitate your game in the long run. 2 copies of Forbidden Droplets. I did play it at 3. 2 is fine to me. Citing the extra one, but I'd say it's perfectly fine. Activate, send cards from either hand or field equal to the number of cards your opponent controls, negate the effects, and half them. 2 copies of Super Poly, because why? Disrupting our opponent is just too prevalent in the format, especially with Super Poly. Zombie World. My apologies. Generally, using Super Poly and their monsters, they can't afford to go -2, no matter how you look at it. Allure of Darkness, because why? More draw power is needed. I did play it at 3, ended up being bricky. 2 is fine by me. The 1 copy of Called by Grave, because hand traps, we don't like them. Wish it was still at 3. 1 copy of Red Eyes Fusion for Dragoon. Barrier from a Different Dimension, because we need further facilitation for extending our plays. 1 copy of Foolish Burial. We all know what that do. Single copy of 1 for 1, so we can get Bloom out to the field. Trap cards. 2 copies of Impermanence. And we're going to get into the extra deck. I play 1 copy of Access Code, because we're doing Needle Fiber combos. Obviously, we're going to end up popping at least 1 or 2 cards. And non-responsive effects are kind of annoying. 1 copy of Vampire Sucker, because 1, single draw power, but the added effect of giving your opponent an extra card does help facilitate Super Poly, but it's better just for the draw power for Jackable and when it comes out during your opponent's turn, so you get that added card. 1 copy of Halqifibrax, because why? This whole format is just revolved around him at this point. Verte Anaconda, because we play Dragoon, and so does everybody else. Honestly, it works very well with Super Poly, so let's just leave it at that. Union Carrier, because like I said, Buster Whelp is ignorant, and this card does not make it any better, considering like half your cards are needed in the graveyard. So equip Gozuki, Mizuki, Balderdrach, whoever, even Bloom. The 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, just for, you know, floodgates or cards that disrupt. Or single spot removal, whichever your poison. The 1 copy of Link Cross, because extending with Needle Fiber just ends you on Savage and all sorts of ignorant cards. 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. I considered cutting this card. It's not too great currently for me, but I play it out of concern. 1 copy of Virtual World Shen, because walking macro, and if I'm in a good spot or advantage, generally he returns a banished card back to the graveyard, so I'm going to keep putting back my Blooms and my Mizukis to the grave to further advance my state. 1 copy of Borreload Savage, because why? It's needed for Omni Negation, and it just Halqifibrax right into it. Obviously, we all know. Herald of Arclight, Omni Negate, banishes cards that are sent from, I believe was that, from, oops, Yeah, sent from hand to grave or banished instead. Or was that deck to grave? Whichever one it is. Yeah. Martial Metal Marcher, because it's needed for the Halqi play. Break him out, bring back 1 tuner from grave, and just keep extending into your Savage, QB, or whatever other plays you have. 2 copies of Nether Soul, because Super Poly is obviously ignorant, and this card only requires 2 zombies, and Zombie World is a floodgate that just watches your opponent cry. And obviously we all play the Dragoon, or I do rather, because so does everyone else. It's ignorant, it's big, it pops 2 cards, and it burns for free damage. Plus it's an Omnigate. Let's leave it at that.